Stephen, how are you doing? Stephen, you there? Stephen,
Okay.
yes. What's the update on your son?
Shalom.
What's the update on Effie?
Well, he's doing better. My wife's coughing a lot now, so I don't know. She was tested yesterday, so we'll see how that comes out tomorrow or whatever.
Okay.
But we're hoping to get
Well,
over all this before
be on the
smoke
lookout
comes.
for a video that Julie is sending out that is a very effective prayer against COVID. And so
Yeah, we just played it
yeah,
earlier.
we played it earlier.
Okay.
Now, okay, so this Torah portion is we just started, Stephen, just now.
Okay.
It's the Torah portion, Shemot. The book received its name, we call it Exodus, but that's a Greek word for departure. Exodus. Hebrew scripture actually named this book, or the first key word of each book. So it's the names. So this book, it starts out, these are the names. And so remember with the 5 books, when you got the Torah, Bereshit means what?
In the beginning.
In the beginning. Shemot, these are the names.
These are the names.
Bamidbar.
In the wilderness.
No, excuse me.
You didn't
That's
do
numbers.
it right.
The Genesis, Leviticus, that is Vayikra.
Yeah, Yah called out.
Yah means he called out. Numbers is Bamidbar, which means
in the wilderness.
In the wilderness, and what is Deuteronomy, which
Devarim,
is Devarim.
These are his words.
These are his words. So in the beginning, these are the names Yah called out in the wilderness. These are his words. That is what the Torah is all about. Now, and I've said this for several years, consider a shift in your thinking. Most people look at this story, it's all about leaving. Leaving is the Exodus, the great Exodus from Egypt. So it's the great exit. But what if we thought to enlarge this more in terms of where were they going? They had an appointment to arrive at Mount Sinai and receive Yah's instructions. That is, that's where we get the Torah. It was given on Mount Sinai.
It was re-given. They already.
Absolutely. But it's not about just getting out of bondage. It's about what are we getting out of bondage for? So the pivotal major event in the book of Exodus is the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. That's the pivotal point. And this was a great quote by Brad Scott. Those who attempt to run to Mount Sinai by avoiding deliverance from Egypt have circumvented his way. But also at the same time, those who think they have escaped Egypt but will not go near the mountain have never really left Egypt. They're still in bondage. Wow, now that's something to think about. Perhaps a better title for this book might be Journey to the Mountain, or From Darkness into Light. From the birth of Abraham to the birth of Moses is about the same amount of time as Christopher Columbus to us. Okay, you got Abraham to Moses, a lot of years have transpired. From the end of Genesis to the book of Exodus is about 350 years. So there's been a lot of years. We talk about waiting patiently upon our God. And that's what I've contemplated and looking at this, how things turned around so much. Once they got Joseph and all his brothers, they were saved. They went into Egypt and were given the land of Goshen. Then we don't really hear anything for quite some time of what's happening to these people. And it's several hundred years.
It's all in the book of Jasher.
Yeah.
Jasher fills in all the gaps.
But there's an awful lot of time that goes by in which they're in bondage. And so, God, what are you doing? What is, our timeline? Like I said, we have a straight timeline, and we are pretty impatient about our timelines. Hundreds of years passed with the descendants of Jacob, all being in Egypt, which eventually slaves them all, with no written word, no great organizational structure, no great leadership, and living under a huge culture of pagan gods. The Hebrews were one of the few monotheistic religions, if not the only one. All these other pagan cultures, they had hundreds of gods. They had gods for everything. How in the world could the children of Israel keep an identity as a people chosen by the God of creation? The covenant was established, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And so they were chosen to survive and come out of Egypt to become a great nation for whom Messiah would come. This is just further proof of the hand of Yahweh upon our people, Israel. Now, what is one thing that kept their identity unique? Can you think of something? What's one thing that these Hebrew people, they knew they were Hebrew people.
Circumcision.
Circumcision. They kept that sign. That was a sign of the covenant. And at this point, with them having become slaves, we will see that how in the book of Yasher, the father used Moses to ensure that they were able to keep the Sabbath day. But for some long period of time, it appears that they were not even permitted to keep the Sabbath day. And that was like the wedding ring. That's the mark of what made them the chosen people. Circumcision and keeping the Sabbath day. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the mid-5th century, stated the Egyptians practiced circumcision for the sake of cleanliness, considering it better to be cleanly than comely. And he also wrote the Egyptians, and this is where he's wrong. He said they're the only people in the world, they at least, and such as have learnt the practice from them who use circumcision. So the Egyptians adopted this practice from the Jews, who were more mightier than we. So the Egyptians adopted that once the Hebrews came in. And well, I still got some phlegm going, but it is so much better. So here's Shemot, Exodus 1. Now this is where you get Shemot names. These are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man his household came with Jacob. And you got all of them listed: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar. Issachar means reward, Jeremiah 31:16. This is what the Lord says: retain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for your work will be rewarded, declares Yahweh. They will return from the land of the enemy. So there is hope for your descendants, declares Yahweh. Your children will return to their own land. One day I hope to return to that land. I know we'll be there in the New Jerusalem. Julie and I just got an email today, matter of fact, from Rob and Dwayne Coxon of the Tamar. And they are the they're the kind of like the travel. They became the travel agency, so to speak, that enabled us to take a tour group there, of which several of you are listening here, went with us on that trip. And they're wanting to know how we're doing. And they said they read our book. Dwayne said Rob read it and encouraged me to read it. And so he said it was very well written and they appreciated it. Wanted to know if we thought we would be planning any other future trips to Israel. And I just wrote him back a little while ago and said we would dearly love to take another group to Israel. Totally depends on the mandate status of the V in Israel, because they are tighter than most of the countries anyway. But there's some out there projecting that as a matter of fact, Dwayne wrote that back, that a lot of the tourism agencies, they're predicting that things will return to a normalcy. I mean, that's their number one industry there. You would think that Israel will do everything it could to get the Americans back over there.
Not really.
But they may, and that is our prayer. So, but until then, we will keep praying for them. Now, here is just a little comparison of what's going on from Genesis to Exodus. You've got
we'll go up for Passover.
Yeah, one day, yes, that'd be awesome. But in the beginning, these are the names. But how's that leap over and compare to what's going on in the fulfillment of what took place in Genesis and Exodus? Because Exodus is really all about it's about redemption. And so, ultimately our redemption is through the Messiah. So here in Genesis, you've got that Yah creates mankind. Exodus, Yah created a nation. And he solidified that at Mount Sinai. In the New Testament, Yah inhabits men's hearts, tablets of stone, tablets of flesh. Genesis, mankind threatened with water, the big flood. Exodus, Israel threatened with lack of water out in the wilderness. And in the New Testament, who's the living water? Israel and the nations are giving living water. Genesis, one man sent to deliver. That was Noah. One man sent to deliver in Exodus. That's Moshe. New Testament, one man sent as the Messiah, Yahusha. Yah blessed mankind. Man became fruitful. In Exodus, Yah blessed Israel, became very fruitful. While in bondage, they became very fruitful. And then beyond. In the New Testament, Yah blesses the fruit of the Spirit. He wants us now to be productive. He's always making and moving us from the physical to the spiritual realm. Verse 6, and Joseph died, and his brethren, and all that generation, and the children of Israel were fruitful, there you have it, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. So, verse 8, now things are going to change. There arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. Even though the Hebrews were not yet a nation on their own at this time, they were seen as a threat to those who followed pagan gods, just as a scenario today with Israel and its surrounding Muslim neighbors. Why is Israel such a threat to all of these surrounding Muslim nations? There's a growing number of those who believe they are, in fact, a part of the 10 lost tribes of the northern kingdom of Israel, who will be drawn back to the land of Israel as the Messiah prepares for his return in earthly kingdom reign. That's what I believe we've seen over the past 30 years and more, 30 to 40 years in this Hebraic roots movement. There are people that will give testimony to that have been following us much longer than we have. That just as Hanik, we played last time, Hanik Young was saying, Northern Kingdom, our brothers, we know who you are. You don't recognize us, and most of us aren't recognizing you. You are our lost brothers. And
may I mention Hanoch is supposed to be at Gates to Zion Tuesday evening, 7
really?
o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I wonder, I guess we'll see whether they're going to have it, because they canceled everything today as well. So I guess maybe they'll publicize that. But and so that's, we may very well feel that we are part of Ephraim out amongst the nations, and yet there's something in us that's drawing us back to his people, to the people of Israel. Verse 9, and he said to his people, his counselors, this is the Pharaoh, his counselors, Balaam, Amalek, Job, and Yitro. Now, what about this? Yitro. Is that the same Yitro?
It is the same one.
It is the same guy.
And Job is the same Job in the book of Job.
Yes.
And Balaam is the same Balaam that shows up in Numbers.
Yes. So these are connections all the way back to Egypt. Behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let's deal wisely with them, lest they multiply and come to pass, that when there falleth out any war, they're going to join our enemies and fight against us. Look at this. They had a fear of a hypothetical possibility, not a present reality. Doesn't that drive so many things? So many times people are afraid of something that's not really real. In their wisdom, they came against the people of God and were literally shooting themselves in their own feet by declaring war on Yahweh. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. And that's the way persecution goes in the countries that are most persecuted. That's where the gospel flourishes. There's Roberta. All right, got Roberta in there. And so they just made them served with rigor, and made their lives very bitter, hard bondage in mortar and brick and all manner of service in the field. All their service where they made them serve was with rigor. They made most of their things out of stone, right? So I just saw this week too, someone was reminding that, because they said, it was Vanderland, who was had a group in Israel on tour, and they were in Nazareth, and asked the tour group, what did Jesus and Joseph, what professions were they? Of course, everybody said they were carpenters. Everybody, we grew up being taught they were carpenters. And he said, they really weren't. Most of the things were made with stone. Trees were not that plentiful. most things were not made out of. Now, no doubt they may have known how to do some woodworking, but they were more likely builders out of stone. They were brick masons. They knew how to build things out of stone. And here, these children of Israel, that's the same thing. They're in Egypt. Most everything had to be built with bricks that were made from mud and straw. And as you know how the story goes, they were later said, hey, you're going to have to get your own straw. Verse 15, and the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. And there was one named Shiphrah, which means beautiful, and the other was Puah, means
Now,
little girl.
in the Targums, they tell you that these are Jochebed and Miriam. They have different names here, so which is interesting. That's what the Targums identify them as.
Huh. That one of these midwives would be actually Jochebed, which is Moses' mother.
Moses' mother, and the other one is Miriam, Moses' sister.
Wow, okay. And he said, when you do the office of midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the stools, if it be a son, then kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. Now, this is what's kind of, I guess a question comes up. There are just thousands of Hebrews and there's thousands of women, and they're having all these babies. They're being very fruitful. Are there more than just two midwives that would kind of be present at every birth? Maybe they were like the head midwives, and they were to train.
They couldn't get there. That's why they couldn't get there fast enough.
Yeah. So that's why that made their excuse very plausible, that there were only two of them, because they said the truth of the matter is, verse 17, that they feared Elohim and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men, children alive. And the king of Egypt called the midwives and said, what are you doing? Why are these men, children living? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they're so lively, and they deliver these babies before we get there. Therefore, Elohim dealt well with these midwives.
Here's where it identifies them. Therefore did Pharaoh, king of Egypt, give counsel to Yehuda midwives, the name of one who was Shiphrah, who is Jochebed, that's the mother of Moses, and the name of the other Puvah, whose name is Miriam, her daughter.
I'm going to put that in here.
That's in the Targums, chapter 1, verse 15.
And Miriam.
Yeah.
Miriam. Well, that's interesting. And so, I suppose then, once they let these babies survive the first week or two, I mean, they didn't say, kill these. Why are you not killing these boys? You're letting them be born. They're living. But then, so that's where they said, well, there's too many of them anyway. We're going to drown them all in the river. And so it came to pass, because the midwives feared Elohim, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. So their plan to just have the midwives kill them at birth wasn't working. And so they said, okay, we're going to throw these live baby boys into the river. From Jubilees 47, it says, and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, issued a command regarding them that they should cast all the male children which were born in the river. And they cast them in for 7 months until the day that thou wast born. Speaking of Moses. So they were killing little baby boys right and left. And so naturally, when Moses was born, Jochebed, who, if she was also one of the midwives, she knew how to protect, but she had something else up her sleeve too. Jochebed means the glory of the Lord. Moses' father's name was Amram, which means an exalted people.
I would go a little more detail on Yocheved, because it's our daughter's name. She's always asked, what does it mean? Literally it says, it's like Yahweh is weighty. Yahweh is the heavyweight, basically. So we say that it means Yahweh is most important.
Yes. The most important of God when wedded to an exalted people. Redemption.
The Hebrew word for glory. The Hebrew word for glory doesn't have anything to do with brightness. It has to do with heaviness, weightiness.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Very good. And of course, we said Exodus is all about redemption, isn't it? And so that's Moses is seen as a type of Christ. He's the Redeemer that will come. And so redemption, in this case, came as a result of the weightiness of the Father, the glory of the Lord being wed to an exalted people. Now, and there went a man in the house of Levi, Amram, and took to a wife, a daughter of Levi, Jochebed, and the woman conceived and bare a son. And she saw that he was a goodly child and hid him for 3 months. Now, this is where it's just speculation. Your guess is as good as mine, but it has been speculated that Moses' original name, because Moses, that was the name that Pharaoh's daughter gave him, Moshe. She drew him out of the water. What was Moses' name before he was named Moses by the Egyptian? He would have been named on day 8. And so Jochebed protected him for 3 months.
Well, there's a lot of names. If you go to Jasher,
well, yeah, I've got those listed here. Hold on a second. Yeah, there's a lot of names that he went by. But it's one suggestion might be to speculate, well, maybe his name was Tovia, which is a common Hebrew name, Tovia, because Tov means good, and it says he was a goodly child. And so Kitov, he was good. Jasher actually records 8 names given to Moshe. And here they are. And they were all given by different family members. They all had their pet name for him. At the end of just Jasher 68, starting at 24, at the end of 2 years, when the child grew up, she brought him to the daughter of Pharaoh, Bithia. She later leaves with the Israelites, and he was unto her as a son, and she called his name Moshe, for she said, because they drew him out of the water. Okay, there's the name Moshe. But the next verse, and Amram, his father, called his name Chabar, which means like friend, buddy, my little buddy, my little chaver. That's a friend. For he said it was for him that he associated with his wife, whom he had turned away. And Jochebed, his mother, called his name Yekutiel.
And I want to comment on that. He separated from his wife for 3 years, and Miriam prophesied that this was wrong and that they should come back together.
Huh.
And he brought her back, and that's when he had Moshe.
Okay.
I had brought her back into his home.
Oh, okay. And so that's why it says, because I have hope for him, and God restored him unto me.
Yeah, because they were terrified to have children because all their children were being destroyed.
And that's why I said, it was for him that he associated with his wife, whom he had turned away. So Yekutiel, called of El. Miriam, his sister, called him Jared, which means dropped. I guess she dropped him on his head. For she descended after him to the river to know what his end would be.
You don't really need to go through every single one of them.
Well,
yeah, it really means went down. So I guess dropped is one meaning, but it went down. Yeah,
he went down to the river. The brother called him Abi Zanuk, and his grandfather called his name Abigdor, because on his account God did repair the breach. And the nurse called him Abisocho, saying in his tabernacle was he hid him for 3 months. All Israel called his name Shemaiah, the name of Yah. Shemaiah, the name of Yah, son of Nathanael. For they said, in his days has God heard the cries and rescued them from their oppressors. So, had a lot of names.
Shema might be the list. Maybe Yah listened. Yeah.
Yah listened. Shema, yeah. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and dabbed it with slime and with pitch and put the child in. That's the same terminology used of covering okay, Julie, you might have to vacate the premises so she can clear her cough. So it's the same wording for when Noah made the ark, covered it with pitch. Notice, the ark, both of them were called arks, both of them protected in God's plan. And she laid it in the flags, the reeds, as a thicket swept away by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to see what was going to happen. You know the story. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself. And when she saw this ark floating, and she opened it, and she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. And she had compassion on him. She said, this is one of the Hebrew children. Now, she may have noticed that because it was circumcised, but Why else would there be a baby floating in the river except all the Hebrew boys were being drowned? And so obviously this was one that she saw that there was an effort there being made to save this child. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, she jumps up and said, hey, shall I go call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse this child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said, that sounds like a good idea. And the maid went and called the child's mother, of all things. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, hey, take the child away, nurse it for me. I'm going to pay you. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. Wow, don't you know that was such a mixed blessing? The child was going to live. She was being paid wages to nurse her own son, and yet she knew all the while she would have, the day was going to come, she would have to give this child back to Pharaoh's daughter. But she did, and the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moshe, because it means pull him out of the water. And she said, because I drew him out. Now, Yasher does, again, the book of Yasher has been so much fun to read, because it fills in some incredible stories that do not bring contradiction to King James, to Exodus in any way, but it fills in some gaps here. Now, this is just fascinating. In the 3rd year from the birth of Moses, Pharaoh was sitting at a banquet when the queen was sitting at his right, and Bethia on his left, and Bethia, that became was the acting mother of Moses, and is lying upon her bosom. And Balaam the son of Beor with his 2 sons, same Balaam, and all the princes of the kingdom were sitting at the table at this banquet. And then what did little Moses do? He stretched forth his hand and took the crown off of the king's head and put it on his own head. Now, when the king and the princes saw that the boy had done this, they were all like flabbergasted, and they couldn't believe this. And the king said to the princes who were before him, what do you think about this? Oh, you princes in the matter, what's to be the judgment against the boy on account of this? If it please the king, let the king send for men who shall bring before him. They had this idea. Let's bring an onyx stone and a coal of fire, and place them before the child. And if the child stretches forth his hand and takes the bright, shiny onyx stone, like what little kid wouldn't do that, then shall we know that with wisdom has the youth done all that he has done, and we must slay him. But if he stretched forth his hand upon this hot burning coal, then we'll know that it was not with any knowledge that he accidentally took your crown and put it on his own head. And the thing seemed good in the eyes of the king. Yeah, right. So the king did according to the word of the angel of the Lord. And the king ordered the onyx stone and coal to be brought and placed before Moses. And they placed the boy before them. Now, what do you think little Moses was going to do? The lad endeavored to stretch forth his hand to the onyx stone naturally, but the angel of the Lord took his hand and placed it upon the coal, and the coal became extinguished in his hand. And he lifted it up and put it into his mouth, and burnt part of his lips and part of his tongue, and he became heavy in mouth and tongue. That's what little Moses did. The angel of the Lord directed him to put his hand upon this coal, and when he touched the coal, it didn't burn his hand, but when he touched it to his lips, it burned his lips and his mouth. Now, what does that remind you of? There's Isaiah. Absolutely. And so this has touched thy lips. And, Isaiah is the one that says, I'm dwell in the midst of people of unclean lips. So this heaviness in mouth and tongue that came upon Moses, maybe this explains why, he said he was slow of speech, that he had some type of speech impediment.
Well, that was all in the book of Jasher.
Well, that's what I just read. You were gone. Julie just now stepped back.
Oh, you read about where he burned his tongue?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that says that was why.
I just read that one.
Yeah. Okay.
And when it just says he became heavy in mouth and tongue, it does not say why he later on argued with God that he couldn't speak. But this could be the very reason. And when the king and princes saw this, they knew that Moshe had not acted with wisdom in taking off the crown from the king's head. So the king and the prince, they refrained from slaying the child, and Moses remained in Pharaoh's house growing up. And the day arrived when Moses went to Goshen. So you guys said he knows he's Hebrew. He's going to go out to the land of Goshen to see his brothers. And he saw the children of Israel in their burdens. They had hard labor. And Moses was grieved on their account. And Moses returned to Egypt and came to the house of Pharaoh. And he said, hey, I pray thee, Pharaoh, I have come to seek a small request from thee. Turn not away my face empty. And Pharaoh said unto him, speak. And Moses said unto them, now, why did he say this? I think even Moses knew that there was a Sabbath day of rest. And Moses says to Pharaoh, let there be given unto your servants, the children of Israel, who are in Goshen, one day to rest therein from their labor. He didn't say anything about so that they can worship their God, or that they, for generations, have kept the Sabbath day. The law had not been given about keeping the Sabbath day, but I believe it had, and it's been instilled to them verbally that that this was instilled, that the children of Israel had a day of rest. But Moses, being the smart guy he is, he goes and appeals to Pharaoh, says, hey, you know, maybe it would just be better for them. You'd probably get more work done out of them if you gave them a day of rest. And the king answered Moses, said, behold, I've lifted up my face in this thing to grant thy request. And Pharaoh ordered a proclamation to be issued throughout Egypt and Goshen, saying, to you, all the children of Israel, thus says the king, for 6 days you shall do your work and labor, but on the seventh day you shall rest, and shall not perform any work. Thus shall you do all the days as the king and Moshe the son of Batiah have commanded. Look at that. God works in mysterious ways, does he not? He had the Pharaoh who had already enslaved these people. He had that Pharaoh order them to keep the seventh day. That's amazing. And it came to pass in those days when Moshe was grown, now this is back to King James, that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens and spied an Egyptian smiting a Hebrew, one of his brothers. He looked this way and that way, and he killed the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. That's premeditated murder.
Well,
not involuntary manslaughter.
There's more to this story, though, that the reason he didn't just randomly pick this one. It was that this particular man, I think it's in the book of Jasher, it tells the story how he came in to this man's home and raped his wife right in front of him. And then he was beating the man the next day. The man had called Moses for help, and Moses ended up killing the man because of what he did.
Yes. I think I may have that in here. Maybe not. I don't have everything from Yasher, but that is a good point, one that you just made. And Moses feared and said, surely this thing is known because, well, I skipped over here. So
and the two men that were striving together were Dathan and
Abihu.
Abihu, yeah.
And so
that's,
after he killed this Egyptian, he goes out, and that's where he sees, okay, if it's Nathan and Abihu fighting against each other. And he says, why are you smiting your fellow Hebrew? And they say, well, who made you a prince or judge over us? You intend to kill me like you did the Egyptian? Moses said, surely this thing is known. Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now, there's a lot that transpires between this and you see this arrow going down here to Midian, because this is where, again, Jasher fills in some blanks here. Backing up, and Pharaoh heard of the affair of Moses killing this Egyptian, and he ordered Moses to be slain. So God sent his angel, and he appeared unto Pharaoh in the likeness of the captain of the guard. God protected Moses in a very, very supernatural way. And the angel of the Lord took the sword from the hand of the captain of the guard and took his head off with it, took Moses' head. For the likeness of the captain of the guard was turned into the likeness of Moses. So the angel took on the form of the captain of the guard. The captain of the guard took on the form of Moses, and it appeared that the captain of guard carried out Pharaoh's order and chopped off Moses' head. God staged a fake execution of Moses right before Pharaoh. And the angel of the Lord took hold of the right hand of Moses and brought him forth from Egypt and placed him from without the borders of Egypt, a distance of 40 days' journey. And Aaron, his brother, alone remained in the land of Egypt, and he prophesied to the children of Israel, saying, now, speaking of Aaron, how much younger do you suppose Aaron was? He's Moses' brother, but there was nothing about Aaron being hidden in bulrushes, of him being saved from being thrown into the Nile. So
it tells us later he's 3 years older than Moshe.
Older.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, later on, yeah.
Okay, so he is 3 years older. That is why there was no problem about Aaron being thrown into the river, because that had not started happening until the time of Moses. Thus says the Lord God of your ancestors, throw away each man the abomination of his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. This is Aaron. Aaron begins preaching the word of God, and he's prophesying. Moses is gone, but Aaron, the older brother, steps in and prophesies to the children of Israel, saying, throw away these idols.
But they didn't listen to him.
They didn't listen to him. Now, back to Shemot. Now, so this kind of picks up where, now Moses is there in the land of Midian.
Well, but before Midian, he was.
I'm not there yet.
You're going to go there.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk all about what happens to Moshe. There's still a lot more transpired. Actually, he went to Cush, and he became the king of Cush for 40 years before he gets to Midian. Mm-hmm. So, but now back to Shemot, the priest of Midian. Jethro, he's also called Reuel, means friend of God, friend of Yah, while Yitro means excellence. Reuel was apparently his personal name, while Yitro may have been a more official or honorary name. The Midianites originated from Midian, of course, a son of Abraham, which therefore actually made Yitro and Moses, they were distant cousins. Now, Yitro had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flocks. Isn't it amazing how many times you've got shepherds and water and God sending somebody to come to the rescue? You had, who are the others?
Rachel.
Rachel needed, she was coming, and who was sent to find Rachel? Eleazar, right?
Mm-mm. Rachel was the one with Yaakov.
That was with Yaakov. So
Eliezer was with Rebecca.
Eleazar went to find Rebecca, but he also found her, the one that was going to water his camels. Then comes Jacob, who is running away from Esau, and he sees Rachel, who needs help because the shepherds are driving off all of her flock. And so here's Moshe doing the same thing. He shows up, and one of the daughters of Yitro comes, and the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How is it that you come so soon? How'd you get back so soon?" And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. Now, Moses may have said he was from Egypt. He came from living in Cush for 40 years. I don't know how they dressed, but he still had some type of Egyptian language. He still had some Egyptian garb, perhaps, that identified him as being from Egypt. And maybe he just simply said, I'm from Egypt. That's where he was born and raised, up in the land of Goshen. But Moses would not have had an Egyptian complexion. His mother and father were Hebrew. And so Reuel says to his daughters, well, where is he? Why did you leave him? Call him that he may eat bread with us. Now, back to Yasher. So this is where it fills in a little blanks here. And they came home to their father Reuel and told him what Moses did for them. And they said, an Egyptian man has delivered us from the hands of the shepherds. He drew up water from us for us and watered the flock. And Reuel said to his daughter, where is he? Wherefore have you let the man? And so they sent and fetched him, brought him home, and ate bread with him. Now, while they're sitting down eating, Moses related to Reuel that he had fled from Egypt, but that he had reigned 40 years over Cush, and that they afterward had taken the government from him and had sent him away in peace with honor and with presents. So Reuel, like, how does he know that he's telling the truth? This guy's saying he was king over Cush, and if he really was king, what's he doing here? And when Reuel heard the words of Moses, Reuel said within himself, I'm going to put this man into the prison house, where it's going to give me some time to conciliate the children of Cush, for he has fled from them. To find out, is he a runaway prisoner from Cush, or do I believe this guy? Do I take his word for it? Now, I'm not going to read you all the scripture here, but just fill you in the story. When he went to Cush, he actually was just head and shoulders above the Cushites in his abilities and his knowledge and his wisdom and his training, and particularly of things of warfare. Mm-hmm. And he educated them on how to defeat their enemies. And so he won a few battles and helped them, and they recognized him and said, hey, this guy, this guy Moses, we like him. Let's make him a leader. Well, they made him more of a leader. Finally, he won so many battles, they made him king. And for 40 years, he was their successful king. They loved him to death. The problem was he was not having relations with the queen. He inherited the queen. And the queen had a little boy. And so the little boy wasn't old enough to inherit the throne. And so finally, the queen says, Moses has been king for a good long while here. My son is in line for the throne, but Moses has not married me. And so there's a technicality here going on. So they saw.
Well, he hadn't consummated.
He hadn't consummated anything. Why? Because Moses knew he was not to intermarry outside of his people. And so there's still, like, Torah is being taught and passed on to Moses even before there was the written at Mount Sinai. And so what happened, the people, they agreed. They said, Queen, you got a good point. We understand this. Yes, I think we need to retire the king, but we really like him. So they said, Moses, we're going to give you all. They heaped treasures upon him and gave him a lot of things. They said, but we need you to leave. We want you to leave. But they left him with their blessing. That's why it says, Moses said, they sent me away in peace, with honor and with presents. But that sounded like just too tall of a tale for Reuel to believe this. So they put him in the prison house, and Moses was in prison 10 years. Mm-hmm. And whilst Moses was in the prison house, Zipporah, which was the daughter of Reuel that had originally met him, she took pity over him, and she supported him with bread and water all the time. She did that for 10 years. Now, why did these years go by and Reuel not really make any effort to check out the claims of this guy that claimed he was king of the Cushites? Yeah, right. So he just forgot about him. And Moshe was confined in the dungeon of the house of Reuel for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, which was the first reign of Pharaoh over Egypt in the place of his father, Zipporah said to her father Reuel, no person inquires or seeks after the Hebrew man whom thou didst bind in prison now 10 years. Now, therefore, if it seems good in your sight, let's send and see what happened to him. But her father knew not that she had supported him. And he's like, man, there's no way he could have lived. Has ever such a thing happened that any man should be shut up in prison? And we really don't feed our prisoners at all. And he's been shut up in prison without food for 10 years, that he should live? Yeah, go check on him if you want to knock yourself out. Zipporah answered her father, surely thou hast heard that the God of the Hebrews is great and awful and does wonders for them. And he it was who delivered Abraham from Ur of the Chaldees. See, these Hebrews still had the reputation, and Isaac from the sword of his father, and Jacob from the angel of the Lord who wrestled with him at the ford of Jabbok. They knew about these things. Also, with this man has he done many things. He delivered him from the river in Egypt, and from the sword of Pharaoh, and from the children of Cush. So also can he deliver him from famine and make him live. One thing seemed good in the sight of the Lord, so he said, okay, go check him out. Reuel commanded that Moses be brought out of the dungeon. So they shaved him, they gave him clean clothes, and he ate bread. And afterward Moses went into the garden of Reuel, which was behind the house. And there he prayed to the Lord his God, Yahweh, his Elohim, who had done mighty wonders for him. And it was while he prayed, he looked opposite him, and behold, and this is where the story gets even a little crazier, there was a sapphire stick that was placed in the ground, which was planted in the midst of Yitro's garden. Now, what is the history of this stick? It's believed that this stick was in the original Garden of Eden. And when Adam and Eve were ousted, that Adam took the stick with him and kept it with him, and it survived the flood.
It was given to Abraham.
And it was given to Abraham.
Shem, and then Abraham. Yeah. Abraham gave it to. It was passed on to all the sons, including Yaakov.
See,
but Esau stole it.
When the Israelites went into Egypt, they took that stick with them.
Right, Joseph.
So the Egyptians now had it, and somehow it ended up with Yitro, who then left Egypt to be the priest over Midian.
It had been Joseph's stick.
And it had been Joseph's. And so here's the stick. Now, it's kind of like a sword in the stone kind of a thing, because no one could just pick it up. And so here's Moses. As he approached the stick, and behold, the name of Yahweh, the Elohim of hosts, was written on this stick, written and developed upon the stick. And so Moshe is reading this. He stretched forth his hand and plucked it like a forest tree from the thicket, and the stick was in his hand. And this is the stick with which all the works of our God were performed. This became the rod of Moses. It wasn't just an ordinary walking stick. This is the rod of Moses. After he had created heaven and earth and all the host of them, seas, rivers, and all their fishes. And when God had driven Adam from the Garden of Eden, here it is, he took the stick with his hand and went and tilled the ground. And the stick came down to Noah. Shem and descendants came to the hand of Abram. And when Abraham had given it to his son Isaac, gave it to the stick, and Jacob took it his father. And when he went down to Egypt, he gave it to Joseph, one portion above his brethren. And Jacob had taken it by force from his brother Esau. Just one more thing that Jacob took from Esau. And after the death of Joseph, the nobles of Egypt came to the house of Joseph, and the stick came to the hand of Reuel the Midianite. And when he went out of Egypt, he took it in his hand and planted it in his garden. And all the mighty men of the Kenites tried to pluck it whenever they endeavored to get Zipporah, his daughter, but they were unsuccessful. Like, whoever can pick this stick up, you can have my daughter. So that stick remained planted in the garden of Reuel until it came one who had a right to it and took it. And when Reuel saw the stick in the hand of Moshe, he wondered at it, and he gave him his daughter Zipporah for a wife. Maybe he regretted putting Moshe in prison for 10 years and likely forgetting about him. And so here was the man who could hold the stick. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. This is back to King James. And she bare him a son, and she called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a stranger in a strange land. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage. And they cried, and their cry came up to Yahweh by reason of the bondage. And Yah heard their groaning, and Yah remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Yah looked upon the children of Israel, and Yah had respect unto them. Chapter 3. Now Moshe kept the flock of Yitro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert. How far away would that be from where they were? They were always looking for a little piece of pasture that they could find to let the sheep graze on. But he came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. Now, is Mount Sinai the mountain of God, or is Horeb the mountain of God? Which is it? Now, there's
it's another, probably another name for the same, but it's one of the idioms in Scripture. When you see Elohim, a lot of times it means the very biggest one or the very greatest one of that category of items. Like the mountains of God, it's in the Psalms. You know, your righteousness is like the mountains of Elohim, and so it could. I think it mainly probably means the biggest mountain at Horeb, which is an area.
Yeah.
Also known as Sinai. You know.
Yeah. The thing, I agree with you that it has been used as two interchangeable names for the same place. Could be a distinction of the two, and one of them greater than the other, but Horeb being the region, the area. And says the angel of the Lord. Well, here again, when you see the angel of Yahweh, this is very likely a pre-incarnate Yahusha. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. The angel of Yahweh, because it does say the angel of Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey in the Hebrew, appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moshe said, hey, I got to turn aside and see this thing. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, there's something there, don't miss. There's an awful lot that goes on around us every day, and we don't turn aside to see. We don't take time. It takes a little bit of time to turn aside from what you've got your mind set on and what you're doing, your plans. You see something that's maybe out of the ordinary. A lot of people don't see what's out of the ordinary. They're not looking for what God might have in store. And so he says, and when Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, that's when he called out to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moshe, Moshe. And what did he say? This famous word, Hineni, here am I. When the Father calls you, when he calls me, are we ready to say, Hineni, here am I. I am at your service. I am your humble servant. Somebody wrote this. I don't know where this came from or who wrote it. This is not scripture here, I don't believe. Moshe, Moshe, this bush that is burning but not consumed is a picture of you. How many bushes have you seen out here? Moshe, how many have burned up with nothing left? The fire has been hot in your life, but still you're here. If you will let me, I'll be the fire in your bush, just like it caught your eye. Many will be caught by the fire that is burning in you, but doesn't consume you. I'll be the voice in that fire. I'll be the power you need to fulfill my call on your life. I am the fire. We sing a song about burn in me a fire, oh God, burn in me. And yet maybe we haven't thought this is very true, what someone has written here. We are to be like that burning bush. We're to be on fire for the Father, yet not being consumed up. And our strength and our energy will endure and last, just as Moses' energy endured up until his last dying day. And he said, draw not nigh hither, don't come any closer. Take your shoes off, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am Elohe of thy father, which was Amram, the Elohe of Abraham, Elohe of Isaac, and Elohe of Jacob. And all that in your King James says that the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon Ha Elohim, the God, the God. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people. He's calling them my people here. He has wedded himself to this people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land and a large unto a land flowing with milk and honey, in the place of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Now, therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is coming to me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppressed them. Now, think about it. They've been oppressed for 150 years, probably at this point. Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. He only said that Moses would bring them out. He never said Moses would take them into the promised land. And are you living in Egypt? Does Yahweh know your sorrows? Does Yahweh desire to deliver you? Will you obey him when he leads you? Now, there's a video I'm going to play maybe at the end of this.
No, play it now.
Oh, I think it's probably better at the end. It's the
That's the one of your song, Moses.
It's my song, Moses.
No, it goes perfect right now.
Well, it kind of has a moral at the end of the song that maybe let me get through this, and because we don't have that much more, and then I'll play that.
Well, it goes all the way to 6:1.
Yeah. Okay.
Why don't you go ahead and play it?
Okay. Let me see if I can
Submit, Julie.
submit, Julie. Now the thing is, let me see if without resharing, can I share from this share? If I click the share. Okay. Let me see. Are you seeing? Is that right? Okay. Now, tell me, do you see my video, or do I have to make a completely different share? Do you see the video on YouTube called Moshe? Moses?
No, we cannot.
No.
I don't see a thing. Nope.
Okay. Well, that answered that question. Okay. I'm going to have to.
Ooh, sounds like you're out in space too.
Yeah, I had to mute everybody. Okay. Okay, Julie, I think I can get to it, but I will have to do this. Okay. Take a little commercial break here. I'm going to stop this share, and I need to go to my PowerPoint, and okay, let me see if I can insert this. Insert media, video, device, about Moses, coming up to it. There it is. Okay. All right. This is a Ken Medema song that what you're going to hear is the only version of this in the world, because it's the only accompaniment track, because I'm aware of. I made the accompaniment track like 35 years ago, and I don't know of anybody else that has an accompaniment track to this song. At least they don't have this one. Okay, so now let me go back to my share. Add the sound.
We used to sing that. We used to sing that in a choir.
Oh
in
yeah,
New Jersey at the Bible College, the Bible Conference Center in New Jersey, where our family typically had our family reunions. I worked on the staff a few summers, and we in their choir on the staff would sing that every time. That was one of our favorite ones.
Oh yeah, and I actually had Ken Medema come to my church. Hosted him in concert in Virginia, Northern Virginia, and I'm sure he must have
He's
sung.
blind.
Yeah, he's blind, but I'm sure I had him sing this song. But this is my version of it. Okay, here's my. Let me mute this.
Oh, Moses, way back there in the wilderness, saw some smoke, came to the bush, and that bush was burning. God said, take off your shoes, Moses. You're on holy ground. Moses, I've chosen you to be my man. Moses, way down in Egypt land. Moses, I've chosen you to work for me. Moses, I've chosen you to set my people free. Not me, Lord. Don't you know I can't talk so good? I stutter all the time. Do you know my brother Aaron? Well, he can sing like an angel, talk like a preacher, but not me, Lord. Don't you know I can't talk so good? And another thing, how will they know that I've been here with you? How will they know what you sent me to do? Don't you know in Egypt they want little Moses dead? Don't you know in Egypt they want little Moses' head? Don't you know they'll never hear a single word I'll say? Maybe you'd better get your dirty work done another way. Not me, Lord. What's that in your hand, Moses? It's just a rod. Throw it down, Moses. Do you mean like on the ground? Yes, I said, throw it down, Moses. Lord, don't take my rod away from me. Don't you know it's my only security? Don't you know when you live here all alone, a man's gotta have something he can call his own? Not me, Lord. Throw it down, Moses. But, Lord, throw it down, Moses. But... Throw it down, Moses. Moses threw the rod on the ground, and the rod became a hissing snake. Moses started running. Well, maybe you'd run. Maybe I'd run. He wasn't running from a hot rod, running from a hissing snake, running scared of what God's gonna do, running scared he'll get a hold of you. Then the Lord said, stop, pick it up, Moses, by the tail. Lord, you haven't lived here very long, Lord. You got the whole thing wrong. Don't you know that you never pick up a hissing snake by his... Pick it up, Moses. Oh, God. It's a rod again. It's a rod again. It's a rod again. Do you know what it means, Moses? Do you know what I'm trying to say, Moses? The rod of Moses became the rod of of God. Strike the rock and the water will come. With the rod of God, part the water of the sea. With the rod of God, you can strike, oh Pharaoh, down. With the rod of God, you can set the people free. What do you hold in your hand today? To what or to whom are you bound? Are you willing to give it to God right now? Go ahead, let it go. Throw it down.
Okay. Wow. That has a little age on it.
35 years. Did you do that 35?
Yeah.
You didn't look any different 35 years ago.
Actually, I recorded that.
Or did you do that part later?
I had a shirt on that I bought in Israel.
No, actually, you didn't record that 35 years ago.
No, not in record.
The music,
the
music part.
Right, I made the accompaniment track at 35 years.
Not the picture. Okay.
No,
Probably about 2010 when you did that.
Yeah, because we had gotten back from Israel. But anyway, great song. But yeah, I got our media guy at church, Jake, to put a background of a wilderness behind me, and just recorded that up in his little studio office. Let me see. Let me get back to the. Here we go. There we go. Now we're back on. So, Moshe said unto Elohim, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. Yahweh has two desires for his people. Of course, to bring us out of bondage and for us to serve him on his mountain. That's why I said at the beginning, this whole thing is not just about Exodus. It's not just about leaving Egypt. It's where we're going. What are we going to do? What's his desire for us? What's our productivity going to be? There are many who desire freedom from the bondage of sin and the accompanying promise of eternal life, but not so many want to serve him on his mountain. And most of those willing to serve him do not want to do so under the parameters of his mountain where he gave us the Torah. And Moshe said to Elohim, behold, when I come to the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the Elohe of your fathers has sent me to you. And they say to me, well, what's his name? What shall I say to them? And Elohim said unto Moshe,
Dan, you're reverberating.
I'm reverberating.
Your voice is reverberating.
Don't know why. That's odd. Is anybody
too. I heard her reverberate.
Everybody else mute.
Yeah, okay. I muted everybody else. Maybe that something was open. Okay, is that probably better? Okay. So when this is very interesting, because when he says, when they say, what's the...
It's happening again.
Yes. That is weird. I don't know why.
Does it have to do with the last song you just did?
I'm going to stop sharing and share again. Share and share alike. Let me go back. Okay. Doing a new share. So maybe it's okay. Okay. Maybe it's okay. Is it?
Now I'm hearing it.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too. Now I'm hearing it. Okay, I just muted everybody, and now I don't hear all that stuff.
Is that better?
It's Susie. When she unmutes, it does that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so is it better?
I think it's probably okay.
Yeah, you sound better.
Yeah, Susie, you got to mute again because every time you unmute it, it brings that back.
Mm-hmm.
You got to mute her.
I think she did herself.
I muted. I just muted. I've been muting.
Okay. All right.
What I think is Susie is she probably has two of your sessions up. She probably needs to get out of one of them. Somehow she might hit something.
Joey Willard is showing too as well.
Yeah. Joy Willard's showing being in here twice.
Mute again, Susie.
Yeah, I'm gonna mute all from this end of it.
I'll get out and come in, but I'm already in.
Okay. Maybe we're okay. Yeah, it's that.
But you need to hurry.
It's weird.
We're running late.
We're running late. It's 3:00. We don't have that much more to go.
Yeah, we do.
Well, this is such a crucial part about what is God's name. What did he tell Moses to say? This is who sent me. And initially he does say right here, verse 14, tell them I am that I am. Says, what's your name? What shall I say to him? I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. And of course that ayeh, asher, ayeh means I am that I am. I shall be what I shall be.
I was listening to Parable of the Vineyard on this, and he was saying this part of it is the title. If you go to the next verse, it's where he gives his name in verse 15. Yeah, okay.
That's what I say. He says two things here. And initially, he says, tell them, I am. That is my name. I am. And so Elohim said, moreover, the next verse to Moshe, thus shall you say unto the children of Israel, and it doesn't say the Lord God, it says Yehovah, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Yahweh, Elohei of your fathers, the Elohei of Abraham, the Elohei of Isaac, the Elohei of Jacob, hath sent me to you. This is my name forever. And this is my memorial to all generations. I think a lot of people have that's bypassed their radar. They just said, they stopped up here and said, well, what's your name? What should I say? I am that I am.
That's a title.
And so that's where most people have stopped and said, oh, his name is, I am. Isn't that interesting how he said that? But his name is just God, right? Because it says, moreover, thus shalt thou say to the children of Israel. If all you have is King James in English, you've got the Lord God is my name forever. That is so wrong. It plainly says Yehovah tetragrammaton Yahweh is my name forever, and this is my name for all generations. Now, Isaac, I can't remember what his last name is, the Assembly of Called Out Believers. He said that as far as Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, that it's very similar. Yahava, Ahava is the Hebrew word for love. And so, that is a nice thing to know. God is love. Yahweh is love. His very name is close to the word for Ahava, love. If you were to pronounce it Yahava. Of course, Dr. Pigeon believes that the correct pronunciation is that it's 4 letters, but only using the vowel sounds set apart from these 4 consonants. So these are all 4 consonants, but they each carry a vowel. And so Yod, He, Vav, or Wa, hey, you get E for the yod, and sometimes E. Yahweh.
Yeah, with a hava, it's actually with a bait instead of a vav. So that's in modern Hebrew it sounds similar, but in ancient probably not.
Yeah, it might be a haba. Yeah, but so this is where we've been saying Yahweh, going along with what Dr. Pigeon has said. But if you want to say Yahweh, Yehovah, Yahweh, that's closer than just saying God. His name is not
God or
God
Lord.
or Lord. And so he says,
So I am is title, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am. And he said,
Yeah.
yes, I am hath sent me unto
and
you.
in the Hebrew, I had this from years past that I am is I am who I am. I will be what I will be. I am that I am. I will be who I will be. I will be which I will be. I will be where I will be. I will be what I want to be. I will be what tomorrow demands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all in the Hebrew,
Yeah.
from what I understand, within those words. Ayeh, asher, ayeh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tense. It's a tense that is an imperfect tense. So it's ongoing. It's constantly continuing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and really, when you ponder that and contemplate
That's
that
cool.
name, I am, it is very, very cool to say, what is your name? I exist. I am the embodiment of what it means to exist. And it's beyond our mind, really. It really is. But beautiful, beautiful stuff. So he says, go and gather the children of Israel, and I will bring you up out, and you hearken to the voice. Now, all this is leading up to what is going to promote the Exodus, and of course the plagues that are going to come. We'll be studying about those in the next couple of weeks. And so this was foretold to Yahweh, to Abraham. Then Yahweh said to him, Abram, know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated 400 years. Of course, we know that their actual enslavement was only like 208 years or something like that. But it's 400 years from the time that this was said to Abraham until the Exodus. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. But every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that sojourneth in her house, jewels of silver and jewels of gold, raiment. You shall put them on your sons and on your daughters, and that's where you're going to spoil the Egyptians. Chapter 4. And Moses answered and said, but behold, they don't believe me. So what?
That word spoil, though, actually is the same word that they use for like the idea of a rapture, that it's snatched out or you'll rescue the Egyptians. Wow. So I guess those who did end up paying back the Israelites slaves for all their work were the ones who didn't die. Maybe.
Could be. That's interesting thought on that. Yeah.
Perhaps they're the ones who went out with the Israelites.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they didn't want to really lose sight of their jewels, so they went with them.
Yeah. But no, it's much more that the ones that went with them wanted to follow their God as well. Yeah, yeah. And Moshe answered and said, yeah, sounds like Ruth. Right. But what if they don't believe me? And he said, well, okay, what do you got in your hand? He's got this rod that he, Yitro had in his garden. It's the original rod for the Garden of Eden. And he says, cast it on the ground. And he did. It became a serpent. And Moses fled from it. And the Lord said unto Moses, put forth your hand, take it by the tail. And he did. And it became a rod again. So this was going to be a symbol of the authority. The rod was a symbol of royal authority and power. The snake represented the patron goddess of Lower Egypt and meant protection when worn on the head. There you see that Egyptian headdress. In Genesis, man falls prey to the serpent. In Exodus, man must master the serpent. And he said, okay, I'm going to give you one more demonstration if they don't believe. Put your hand in your cloak, into your bosom, and pull it out, and it was all leprous. And he said, put it in again, and he pulled it back out, and it was healed. it shall come to pass, if they will not believe of these two signs, neither hearken unto thy voice, that thou shalt take of the water of the river and pour it on the dry land, and the water which thou takest out of the river shall become blood. So that's plague number one, the blood in the Nile. And Moses said to Yahweh, O Adonai, I am not eloquent. Why? Slow speech, slow of tongue, probably from what happened when he was a baby and the onyx and the colt. And he says, who has made man's mouth? Who makes the dumb and the deaf or the seeing and the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be thy mouth and teach thee what thou shalt say. And he said, oh, my Lord, is there anybody else? Send anybody. He says, well, okay, your brother, Aaron, let's send him. And so he'll be the spokesman. He'll be the mouthpiece, and you shall stand in the place of God for him, telling him what to say. And thou shalt take this rod in thine hand wherever you do the signs. Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, let me go, I pray thee. And I had to explain all this to Yitro. And he said, and the Lord said to Moshe in Midian, go, return into Egypt, for all the men, they're dead, which sought thy life. Okay, this is 40, 50 years later. Now, somewhere it said, I think in Yasher, Julie, that he was 27 when he left Egypt. So 27, 37, 47,
67.
57, 67, and then 10 years in prison, 77. So that's why that holds true that we've always said that Moses was about 80 when he was called upon to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. But we just divided his life into three segments. First 40 years as in privilege in Egypt, second 40 years in as a shepherd, and the third 40 years as this deliverer. And so that's not really true. First 27 years in privilege, then, well, he was king for 40 years, then in prison for 10 years. Now his last 40 years, he's going out to be this redeemer. And so Moshe took his wife and his sons and set them upon the donkey, and they returned to the land of Egypt. So they're heading on their way. And it says, we're going to get another little explanation from Yasher on this. In King James, you recall that it says they came by the way of an inn, that the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone, caught the foreskin of her son, and cast it at his feet, and said, surely your bloody husband art thou to me. So he let him go, and then she said, a bloody husband thou art because of the circumcision. Now, this has always been a confusing passage because, you know, why was God about to kill Moses, number one? And then what is this thing with Zipporah circumcising her own son and throwing it at Moses and saying, a bloody husband you are?
Well, I have in the book of Yasher, and you're getting ready to read it.
Yeah.
But number one, it says I believe it's in the Targums where it says that Zipporah was no less than Sarah. She was a very godly woman, and she realized this is written in Jasher, that there was a legal accusation from the accuser against Moshe, because when Gershom was born, Reuel would not allow Moshe to circumcise this firstborn. Now the secondborn, Eleazar, that he did allow. And so it was a legal accusation from the destroyer. The Targums say this was not Yah that met. It reads like Yah here, but if you go into the Targums, it says the angel is the destroyer, the accuser of the brethren, who came legally to say that he could kill Moses because Moses had violated the Torah.
Non-compliant.
He was non-compliant. And Zipporah realized that this is what had happened, and that's why she jumped in and circumcised her child, and then she went back to the destroyer. And you're going to read all that.
Well, here's what happened. And Moses, according to Yasher, Moses rose up to Egypt and took his wife and sons with him and was at an inn. Okay, all that's the same. And he wished to kill him on account of his firstborn because he had not circumcised him and had transgressed the covenant which the Lord had made with Abraham. For Moshe had hearkened to the words of his father-in-law and spoken to him not to circumcise his firstborn. And Zipporah saw the angel of the Lord seeking occasion against Moses, and she knew that this thing was owing to him not having circumcised Gershom. And Zipporah hastened and took a sharp rock stones that were there, and she circumcised her son, and she delivered her husband and her son from the hand of the angel of the Lord. So, in the nick of time. And so that's exactly what happens. That sheds a little bit better light on what was going on here. And it says something also about, if we're going to serve the Lord, he wants us to be in compliance with his Torah. Otherwise, we're doing things in our own strength, in the flesh, so to speak. And Yahweh said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. And he went and met him. So now Aaron hooks up with him, and they travel on to Egypt. And the people believed, and when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel and that they looked upon their affliction, then they bowed their heads in worship. Now we got one more chapter. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh Elohim of Israel, let my people go. See, that's where he uses his proper name, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. He didn't go and say, thus says Hashem, because we reverence his name so much. No, he went in and said, Yahweh Elohim of Israel says, let my people go. The thing about Paro or Pharaoh, his name is not, that's a title, but even in that title, Pe is the picture language of a mouth. Ra is the Hebrew word for evil. And of course, He is that picture of a window. It means to behold something, reveal, Yod He Vav He. So the mouth, the evil mouth revealed is really in the name of Pharaoh itself.
And we also see, I don't know if you have this in here, but Pharaoh, because of his evil that he continued to do against the children of Yasharel, he got a plague on himself. And he ended up dying of the plague, but he used the blood of the children to bathe himself in, thinking that he would be made well.
Yeah, and the accounts in the I don't know if it's Yasher, of how the rigors and the hardship that they put upon them. They were so much into worshiping their own gods when they would go through, like there's no rain and stuff. They wanted to appease the gods. They came up with this thing, well, let's appease the gods with the lives of baby Hebrews. And so there was a record of like 350 babies that they were killed, and they forced the Hebrews, as they were building these cities and walls, that they would put the baby's body literally in to the wall.
Well, that was if they didn't make their quota. They would take their child and bury the child.
Well, this is also part of
alive.
That's not just that they didn't make their quota. This is also, I was reading this about their appeasement of their gods, that they actually took the bodies of the Hebrew babies, had them put them in the walls, had them put the mortar over them, and so they were literally child sacrificing with the lives, and there was some record of like 350 babies that was done to.
Well, 370 something, I think, were done with Pharaoh. They bought the blood of a baby every day to Pharaoh for the plague.
Yeah. So they were ruthless. And so Pharaoh commanded the same day. Let me back up here. And Pharaoh says, I don't know your Lord, and I'm not going to let Israel go. God of the Hebrews hath met with us. Let us go, we pray thee. 3 days' journey. And the king said to them, wherefore do you, Moses, and let the people go from their works? Get on with your burdens. And Pharaoh said, and the people of the land are now many, and ye make them rest from their burdens. See, he was aware that, thanks to Moses, that something he instituted a long time ago, they had a day of rest. Maybe that had gone by the wayside as well by this time. But he said, and you make them rest from their burdens. Like we've read that to understand. And now you want them to go out and stop laboring so they can go make some kind of sacrifice? Not on your life. And so he he made their work harder. The taskmaster of the people went out and their officers, and they spake to the people. Thus, we're not going to give you straw. Go get your own straw where you can find it. Yet not aught of your work shall be diminished. So the people, they had to go out and find their own straw to make bricks, and so it just made things worse for them in a sense. And so this is how this Torah portion is going to kind of come to an end. That there is like, wow, Moses is really upset. The people are upset. Verse 21. And they said unto him, the Lord look upon you and judge, because you have made our savor to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of the servants, to put a sword in their hand, to slay us. And Moses returned to the Lord and said, Lord, wherefore hast thou so evil entreated this people? Why is it thou hast sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in thy name, he hath done evil to this people, neither hast thou delivered thy people at all. What a great lesson for us to learn right here. The people did not know the end of the story.
I wanted to say one more thing, that when Moses and Aaron went in to Pharaoh, there were 2 lions outside the palace, and Moses loosened, these lions were for, allowing people in and out or whatever. But Moses, with his rod, loosened these 2 lions, and they got up and they were like following Moses and Aaron in there like dogs, jumping up and down with joy. It was so odd that Pharaoh was in shock and just really didn't even know what to do with it, because it was so unnatural. But the animals, the 2 lions, were just giving joy, and just like little puppy dogs right behind Aaron and Moshe as they were coming into the king.
And where was that?
This was when they were on the way in.
Where did you find this?
That's in Jasher. It's Jasher 71.
79.
9. 21. It
40.
says, yeah.
Well, don't read it all.
Yeah.
But it's Jasher 79.
It says, when Pharaoh saw this thing, he was astonished and greatly terrified, for their appearance was like the children of Elohim. But these lions were rejoicing over them as a dog rejoices over his master when he comes from the field. And it was just.
Yeah. So what's the point of this, of where we're stopping in this lesson today? And it's just like I said right here, these people, they have yet to know the end of the story. And so whatever your circumstances, know that God has a plan. Be patient. I know the past 2 weeks of dealing with getting over whatever had attacked me, just had to just say, God, I know that, Father, I know that you have a plan and that deliverance will come. And I'm so grateful for his deliverance. And he is there. He is going to see each one of you through this trial that we've all gone through, it seems, over these past weeks. And so we end with Exodus, Shemot, verse 1, 6:1. Then Yahweh said to Moses, now shalt thou see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of his land. And even that's not going to, it's still going to be some period of time. There are 9, well, he hasn't done the actual blood in the Nile yet. So there are 10 plagues to go. And these plagues, some of them lasted months.
Well, I think they say, a lot of scholars believe they're about a year and a half.
About a
maybe.
year and a half. So,
a year to a year and a half.
So, again, God's timetable is not always as quickly as we think things might ought to be. But in his time, he makes all things beautiful in his time. All right. That is the end of this Torah portion. So let me stop the share and I will stop recording. Okay.
We're going to take about a 10 minutes.
We'll take a little